Hello and welcome back. In this first part we're going to be marking out and cutting the base. From the list of materials you need the 12mm MDF. I'm going to show you now a fairly simple way of marking and cutting this base out, and this is where it all starts. So let's get going. Okay, first job is to mark out a 19-inch circle fairly close to two corners of your sheet so as to waste very little wood, and I'll show you how to do that. It's extremely simple. So we need to mark 9.5 inches from each side, and we're going to actually put a small nail in here. From that we will be tying a string to give ourselves a perfect circle. Now obviously we need to measure this, making sure we're at the correct length. Okay, job done. Next thing, great fun, a perfect 19-inch circle. Okay, with no more need for the nail, we can remove that. On to the next stage. Okay, the next stage we're going to form a rectangle. So if we measure 19 inches there as well, we can use, as a little tip, we can use the straight edge of one of our pieces of wall which is in the cutting list to complete that. Now we're going to measure 29 inches across and 29 here, and again using your wall as a straight edge or a ruler. If you possess a long ruler, that's fine. We're now going to complete that rectangle. Okay, now by hand I'm just going to get some flowing lines here so as we can get the shape of the garden. Now don't worry too much about this shape. This is just the shape of the garden. It can vary as long as it's similar to this. So we're looking at coming in this side as well and curving round. If you're not happy with doing this by hand, you can use anything from the kitchen, like a cup or saucer, to create these curves, or you can even use the method with the string and the nail to get you the curve. So as long as you've got a similar shape to this, we're ready to cut. Okay, well, the electric jigsaw is one tool that you're really going to struggle without having, so hopefully you'll have acquired one of these. They're fairly cheap now to buy, and a cheap one will do fine. I'm going to show you now a small part of the cutting of this, so just to get you an idea of how we're going to cut this. So we'll start at this point where it's easiest, and we'll follow our pencil marks all the way around till we end up with the baseboard, the correct size, the shape. We'll continue like this till we cut out the complete baseboard. Okay, when you're happy with your marking out, continue jigsawing your base out and you should end up with something similar to this. Only cut the hole out when you're happy with the shape. Don't forget, this garden can be slightly different shapes, so don't worry about that. Now, using the centre of this circle as the centre for the house, we're going to measure out 6 inches in each direction, forming a 12-inch square. Now this 12-inch square is the base of the main house. I'll show you in the next section how we make the foundation. Okay, from your materials list we're now going to cut 4 lengths of 3/4 by 1 3/4 inch pine for the foundations. We're going to require 2 12-inch lengths of this and 2 10.5 inch. So we'll simply mark out the length to make sure we get it at perfect angle. Mark there. Now you can either jigsaw this or you can use a handsaw, whichever your preference. Okay, so we'll end up basically with the 4 pieces. Now we're going to be gluing these later inside the 12-inch square, positioned thus. Now it's always best to what we do a dry run, so don't rush into gluing these in place, because you can always change this now if you've made any mistakes. So just leave these in place for now, and we're ready to mark out the 12-inch square house base. In your materials list, you'll notice that there was listed 3 lengths of 3 foot by 8 inch strips, which is the actual wall. Now this is left over. This is the other 3 foot by 2 foot 6mm MDF, which we're going to use to cut the 12-inch square floor. So we are marking out the 12-inch square base, and out of the studio and into the workshop to cut that. Well, whichever way you cut your floor, you're going to need to sand the edges. So a quick sanding block. And it keeps things nice and clean and tidy. Okay, so when we're ready and we know that that's a perfect fit and we're happy with that, we're in a position we can actually glue that there now. So that's the next stage. So now, with any good quality PVA wood glue, we're going to start with the first piece. Okay. Now, obviously we need to glue the ends as well. So, plenty of glue. Don't skimp on the glue. Place the second piece. Don't worry, we can always straighten it up in a minute. As long as it's in roughly the right position, we're okay. And it's going to slide about a bit, so don't worry, we'll straighten all that out in a few moments. We've got our guidelines to follow here, so it's just a matter of straightening it now by eye and just pushing it all together neatly. It's not essential if this is spot on to the millimetre, we're just looking for a basic accuracy. Okay, now we're going to go around here. Again, a fair amount here, don't skimp. This is the base of the house, it's going to take the weight of the whole building. And just as a little tip here, it's sometimes worth doing a small, what we call fillet, around the base, to just make sure. I don't know if that's possible for you to see that from there, but I'm just putting extra glue inside between the structure and the base. Now we're ready for the top. We're going to simply place that on. Again, it's going to move a little bit because of the glue until it just bonds a little bit. Don't worry too much about absolute accuracy, because all of this is going to actually be covered in plaster later on. So we need to just hold that for a few minutes, push together again here and here so we know it's together. Now, to be honest, you can pin this. If you're happier to pin, you can do that. But I've found over the years that as long as a weight is applied to this, to MDF and ordinary wood with a good wood glue, the bond will be as strong as the wood itself. You can put anything on here to weight this down. Any household item from saucepans to teapots, anything, as long as there's weight on here. Now I happen to have a nice little 24 scale house, so I'm actually going to put that on as the weight. As long as there is weight on the base, you will get a very strong bond. And there we have it. So now the house will start to take some shape. We're going to be using the 8-inch strips of 6mm MDF, which we cut earlier, and you'll see the reason why we cut them to length, to oversize, and we'll now produce those wall by wall. We'll start with the ground floor back wall, and I'll show you now how it's simple to mark out and cut, and we'll start to construct the actual ground floor level. So let's do some marking out now for the ground floor back panel. So I'm going to mark 12 inches bottom and 12 inches on the top. Mark that. We're then going to mark in 3 inches and 3 inches from the other end, or if you like 9 from that end. So it's 3 inch and 9. One more dimension left to put in here is 2 inches down. Don't really need to mark right the way across because we're really only interested in this section right here, which we're going to remove with our trusty jigsaw. Okay, I've cut out the previously marked out rear ground floor panel, just giving it a little sanding to make sure it's nice and tidy, and I'm going to actually just temporarily hold that in place there. I'm using a set square which will just support it so we can actually view the whole thing. Again, no gluing at this stage, gluing later on. This is actually looking into what will be the external chimney, and we'll come to that later, the uses that this could be put to, and the use that I'm actually going to use it for in this particular model. So that's in place. We'll now tackle the left hand ground floor wall. What we've got here is 2 inches, 5, 7, 9.5 and 11.5. Now, as before, we're obviously going to mark that again at the top. 2 inches, 5 inches, 7 inches, 9.5 and 11.5. After which we'll join those to give us the outline of the window and the doors penciled in. The next stage is to draw a cross here, which is 2.5 inch across here. So mark that at 2.5. This dimension is 1.5 inches down from there to there, and this one again is 2 inches. So we mark across there and there. Now, for this point here, this reference, we need halfway between. So in the case of that one, it's 1.25 inches. That is 1.5 inches. That gives you the center point there. Now, in keeping with trying to think of this as something most people can tackle from a home rather than a full workshop, just a suggestion, we have a plate to give us this radius, which most people might have. It's actually a 7.5 inch diameter plate. Now, if you place this pencil in the middle up against there, down to the mark there, and that will give you that curve there. Same on that side. This one, as this is lower, will give you a different angle. So we place the pencil at the top, move in till we meet the edge of the door, and draw that in. Now that will give us the window opening here and the door there, which we're going to remove in the next stage in the workshop, and of course remove the total length. Okay, well, before I head off to the workshop, there's a couple of little things we need to do. One of them being that we can't cut the aperture out for the window without drilling a small hole here first. So I'll just show you quickly how we do that to start off the cutting of the window. Obviously here we're okay, we can just come up from the bottom, but that's going to need a small 1/4 inch hole for the jigsaw to enter the area. And also at the same time, the right hand ground floor wall, which is the same length, 11.5 inches, we may as well chop this off as well and bring, so we'll be coming back into the studio with the left and the right hand wall. Now the window aperture, to enable the jigsaw to cut, we need to make a hole here. Otherwise we can't obviously start the jigsaw without something to start in. So we're going to drill this through. And at the same time, we've now got that ready to start the cutout. And as we're heading off to the workshop anyway, and you're heading off to your shed or garage or whatever, it will be just as easy now to cut the right hand ground floor panel, which is 11.5 inches again, which is obviously the same dimensions as the left one. There's 11.5 inches, and there's no cutouts on this. This is going to be a plain wall on the right hand side. So off we go now to the workshop to trim this lot. Okay, hot foot from the workshop. I've cut out the window and the door aperture. Keep the door back for a template for marking out the real door when we come to it. We're going to be taping this in place. Thus, because we're still into the dry building. No gluing yet, please. A couple of bits of masking tape holds the whole thing so it doesn't fall apart. There we go. And the right hand side again taped in place just to hold it there so we can get the whole thing sorted. Now you will notice on this front edge, you haven't made a mistake by the way, this is actually 1/4 of an inch back from the ends here. This is because the front lift off panel will sit on this base here. What we're going to do now is mark out and cut the floor which sits on here for the first floor. The reason we're going to cut it out now before we glue these is because we can use it on top to place a weight on to aid the glue setting on all this. So we'll still haven't glued this in place yet. We're next going to mark out this floor. Okay, this is the remainder left over from the 6 feet by 2 feet 6mm MDF. So left over from part 1. So what I'm going to do is measure 13.5 inches here, 13.5 here, 16 in this direction, and that is our rectangle, which is our base for level 1 on the house. Okay, from the remaining 6mm MDF from part 1, I've marked out a 13.5 inch by 16 inch rectangle. This is going to form the base for level 1. Off to the cutting room now, to the workshop to cut this out. Be back in a minute. Okay, we can actually start gluing some walls on now, so let's go back to this section, take that apart, there, lay them down so we know where we are with those. We're going to do the back section first because we've got the set square to hold it in place. Plenty of PVA, don't skimp on the glue. I'm going to place that in position there. And that will just keep it upright till we're ready. And let's go on to this piece. And 2 edges. Place that, slide along. Make sure we're absolutely perfectly straight all the way down and in the correct position, which is actually on the edge, right up to the edge. And then we just simply masking tape that in place so the joint is under pressure. Same there, top and bottom. You can soon feel when it's all in place because it's just flush all the way around. Okay, onto the left hand side. There's no quick way to do this, unfortunately, especially with a large pot of glue. Just have to do your best to get it in the right place. We're going to put that in position there, and masking tape again. Okay, now what is useful is, because we cut this floor out previously, which I've just brought back with me, we can just place it temporarily on top, which enables us to put a weight on there so that glue will set those 3 walls in place. Double check they're exactly okay. If they're flush at the back and the sides, they should be about 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters back from the front edge here. So we just let that dry for a while. I've turned the house round just temporarily, and we're now looking at the right hand wall and part of the back. So what I'm going to do is place the lift off front in place, which is sitting on this lip, which we've got this recess, and I'm going to mark that with a pencil now. I'm going to pop away and cut that. For the next part, we're going to mark out on this front the door and the window dimensions. So 2 inch, 5 inches, 6 inches and 11. So that's 2, 5, 6 and 11. Okay, for the horizontal lines, we're going to come down 2 inches from the top, there and there. That's actually going to be the top of the window and the door. So let's cross there, there, and then we're going to come down 6 inches. But only, of course, for the window cut out. So what we've left with now is the door to be cut out and the window. Just one thing before we go to the cutting room, as before with the other window, we need to make some pilot holes here in the corner for the jigsaw, and again with a scrap piece of wood below to protect the table. Now I'm going to do one of those in each corner for the jigsaw, so I can jigsaw that square out. We don't need it here because we can start straight from here and curve at the top. Although if you're happier to, you can drill a pilot hole for the door as well. Ready for cutting. If all's gone to plan, this is what you should have ended up with. This is the front lift-off panel. Now there's only one thing left to do to this, and that's to mark out an inch strip, which we're going to cut off. I'll explain to you why in a moment. So this ruler happens to be exactly 1 inch deep. So we're going to make a mark along there, and off to the cutting room again. Here we have the front panel finished with its 1 inch strip separate now. What I'm going to show you is it's going to actually go in position like this. So what we do first is we'll get some glue on the ends and some glue on there as well to make sure there's plenty, because MDF can be a little porous, so we have to make sure there's plenty on there. Now this needs to be flush at the top and the sides, so just with your finger make sure they are flush at the top. Masking tape to hold in place, push that quite tight so it doesn't slide back off. Masking tape here, flush at the top again, and tape. And then this will be the lift off from there. So this is the previously cut first floor base. Now to help us locate this, obviously this can go anywhere at the moment, we're going to make a type of template. which will sink into this floor. So we're going to hold that in place, remove the front panel so we can get out in access easily, and we're simply going to mark on full surfaces, which will give us a piece of wood which will sink into this space and will locate the floor properly. Okay, here's the template we cut out earlier, we marked out and cut out. Now, as with most true to life houses, you'll find this may not be perfectly square, so it might be a good idea to just put that in there and mark front and the left, just so you know exactly the orientation of that. Now with this one, this is the main floor obviously. What I've done is I've marked 1/2 inch down the back and 1 inch on the right. So we've got a 1/2 inch mark here and 1 inch mark there. And that is exactly, if we hold this in the correct manner and turn that over and turn that one over, we're going to be gluing that in place. So the right hand edge has got this inch overhang and this has just got 1/2 inch. And when that's turned back over in that position, this will just lock into place. Now in the list of tools, I've listed a hot glue gun. It has limited use, but it can be very useful if you don't want to wait too long for certain bits before you can get on. I'll give you an example of that in the next stage. Okay, let's place that where it's going to go and finish off the other 2 lines so we know exactly where it's going to go. Now what we can do here is we need to wood glue this. So this whole area, plenty of wood glue. So now we know exactly where this is going and we're perfectly happy in the position it's going to be in. Push together for a second, pull back apart, and this is the great bit now. With the addition of 4 small blobs of glue gum, we can actually move straight on with this. I'll show you exactly what I mean. You have to move fairly fast with this because, as I say, it does start to set as soon as it cools down. If we position that and push down as much as we can on that, give it a few seconds, not very long. Hot glue gun is a brilliant little tool and very useful. Now we're going to have the strength of the wood glue bonding those, but we've got the temporary fixing of the hot glue gun. So we can immediately pick this up and it's ready to move on to the next stage. Now you may have wondered what the large overhang is on this first floor base. This is actually the base of the balcony, which will overlook the garden. Now what we're actually going to do is we're going to measure back from this leading edge 2.5 inches at each end, which I've lined in already there. So that's 2.5 inches back from here, leading edge. Now in keeping with previous curves, I'm going to help, hopefully this will help you. We've got an actual dinner plate here and I think it's roughly 9 3/4 inches across. Now I'll just move this down so I can show you a little bit easier how we're going to deal with this. We're going to be placing that there in the centre and mark in our balcony base. It's ready now for cutting. I'll be back in a moment with it cut. So still using the offcuts from the initial sheet of 6mm MDF, we're going to cut 5 panels now. 3 of them are 11 inches long by 4 and 2 of them are 3 inches 5 inches by 4. So we've got 4 inches by 11, 4 inches by 11, 4 inches by 11, and then we've got 4 inches by 3 and 4 inches by 5. So when we've cut these panels, I'll show you where we position them on the next level. Now the other great thing about building a house in sections is it's very easy to carry on working on the base at base level. So what I'm going to show you is just a quick marking out of this area so as you'll know where to put these small panels. So the first line is another 2 inches in, 2 inches in there, and line the outside line, and 2 inches from the front as well. So basically these first 2 lines are both 2 inches from the edge. The only other line here is just 1/2 inch from the leading edge, which is there. So you've got the 3 main lines. Now the inner ones are just purely marked as a guide, so you know that if you put your MDF against the outer one and line, this is more or less the line. And you've also got these 2 smaller panels marked in here with a gap in the middle. And I'll show you in a minute how we put these together, how we progress from here. Okay, what we're going to do now is glue these small panels in place on the areas we've previously marked. I've got them ready so they're in place. I can just tip them over and glue them. And as previously, on the last part, I prepared the top panel for this, so as we can place that on top temporarily with a weight on it to aid the gluing process. Now this is actually 11.5 inches by 11, and this is 6mm MDF. So what we're going to do is, again being generous with the glue here, plenty of glue, and on the edge there. We place those carefully there, and we align them carefully so they're exactly on the lines we've marked out. It's flush along the back, don't forget, so that's okay. Best thing at this stage is to put a bit of masking tape on here to keep the whole thing stable. We're then going to check this, glue down the end. And position so. Again, masking taping that panel together, putting a bit of pressure under there. Move on to the one but last. Position thus. If you're not sure about glue down one joint, don't be afraid to put some more in. Really, we can wipe off any excess later. It's better to put too much on rather than too little. We want a really good sound joint. I'm going to place that one there. Now with those all in place, some more masking tape on the 3rd and the 4th joint. They do tend to wobble and move about a bit, don't worry too much. This will happen until we've got the top in place, which will put the pressure on all of it. Now again, we're just placing this on roughly, we're not trying to line anything up. That's there simply so we can add some weight and get a good bond. So double check all your, it's quite often you have to reposition these panels to get them perfectly on the line. And that one's moved in a little bit, don't worry. And there we are with it. When we're happy with they're all in their correct position, we can place our trusty weight on top, which is our little 24 scale house, which is quite heavy. Right, well, before we can actually glue this base in place, we have to put it there temporarily. We're going to measure back from this edge 4 inches, and from that end 4 inches. And we draw a line across. Now, to position this line, we actually use the reference of that at the front, which is exactly where that panel ends. There's actually the 3-inch panel we glued in place. Using that, we can mark out. So on this edge here again, we're lining up with the 5-inch panel we glued in place, and we're going to mark back. So we're going to remove again this section. All will become apparent later why this is going to be removed. Okay, that brings us to the end of part 1 in this project to build this incredible house. I hope you've enjoyed that first part and you'll join me for part 2 and the preceding sections of this project. It's going to get really interesting as we go along. As you can see, it's an incredible building. So see you in part 2.